You know, my Uncle Bob, he's been to prison a few times. You know, the first time he went to prison was for armed robbery and aggravated assault. He had some burglary of habitation as well, to throw that in there. And, you know, he got paroled and got out. And, you know, he kind of works, he's worked different kinds of jobs during his life, you know, so he works, he has a job, you know, when he's not in jail. And the second time he was in jail, you know, he was in jail for manufacturing of a controlled substance, distribution. You know, he was, you know, selling some drugs on the side. You know, people want drugs, and so, you know, so yes, it's not. It's against the law to sell drugs, but you know, people were buying them, right? So it's not like he was forcing people to buy those drugs. And so Uncle Bob, you know, he's in and out, and he's you know, likes to go fishing, and he also you know, sometimes he can be pretty handy around the house, you know, and he knows how to fix things. Well, you know, the most recent time for Uncle Bob being in jail right now is, well, you know, he got into some trouble with you know, a hit and run while driving while intoxicated, fled from the police, ended up getting in a fight, and they charged him, and he got convicted of aggravated assault, vehicular assault, resisting arrest, and assault of a police officer. So this time around, he's in jail for a spell. Probably be there for a while. But you know, my Uncle Bob, he's a good man. He really is. He's a good man. My Uncle Bob's a good man. And then there's Fred, the neighbor, and you know, Fred, you know, he likes to you know, yeah, he smokes weed every day, and you know, he likes to drink, and although he does these things, you know, he's somebody that, you know, he can be okay sometimes. You know, Fred can be okay sometimes. Never mind that he has 3 children, and he doesn't really you know, prioritize paying child support or trying to help provide for the needs of those children. But you know, Fred's really good at you know, his project cars, where he builds classic cars and hot rods. And man, you should see his fishing pole set, them rods and reels. I mean, he's got some good equipment there and good tackle for going fishing. And, you know, and I get it. You know, Fred, he's sometimes he can. Some people might say he's out of hand. Gets in a fight. I mean, he broke some guy's nose. I think last time he was out at a bar, and I think his reasons, you know, were for, you know, that person perhaps, yeah, maybe the person didn't look in his direction in the right way, perhaps. But you know, I got to tell you, Fred is a good man. Fred's a good man. So it just depends on what your definitions of a good man is, or how about a good person, right? So these are a couple examples I'm giving you, I guess, to the extent a bit of a satire, maybe not, you know, not necessarily sarcasm, but satire, right? It's like I'm coming across like I really mean what I'm saying. Maybe I actually believe it. So it's a bit, you know, I would say satire when maybe on purpose I'm being ironical. But the truth is, people can have distorted views of what a good person is. So I see this happen a lot in relationships where people are connected to toxic people, types of codependency, if you will. And what will happen, whether it's a girl who has a toxic boyfriend with toxic behaviors, or what if it's a guy, he has a girlfriend with toxic behaviors? What about someone who has very poor boundaries with toxic family members? You get the idea. So on one hand, this person has this insane loop that repeats itself, where they will express and air some grievances about their frustrations and stress and problems with an individual as a result of that person's behaviors. And they might even show up to therapy, or they might try to talk to a friend about it, someone that they, you know, maybe they view as being supportive. And so maybe they're coming to perhaps, hey, I need help with these situations. I need you to help me, right? Gotten some problems with these people. So what they'll do, they'll show up and they'll describe something that's the problem, like a toxic relationship, but at the same time defend the toxic person by trying, well, not trying, it's deliberate, to be dismissive of the actual behaviors that are a problem, to be dismissive of the pattern and the overall picture of a toxic person's behaviors. And they do this by trying to perhaps pivot to some minute or irrelevant exception of the person's behaviors, that one specific variable within a context, it can look like they're an okay person. So in this situation, what the person is doing, they're basically focusing in on one detail to then dismiss all of the facts of the bigger picture, to dismiss the evidence for what a person's behavior says. Because the truth is, whether we like it or not, we are our behavior in a sense. Our behavior is our messages. Our behavior communicates our values, what we prioritize, what is important, says a lot about us. So within relationships, it behooves us to look at the overall presentation of all of a person's behaviors, all of it, whether, the good, the bad, all of it, and then ultimately, what prevails? Does the overall benefit or value of a person's overall behavior in terms of whether it's healthy or not, and then being able to see it in that balance? Because with a codependency situation, with a person who's codependent with a toxic person, they will sabotage any rational reason for why they need to have boundaries with this relationship, or even remove themselves from the situation. So they find a way to be dismissive. So in the same breath, they can describe toxic behavior and then finish off what they're saying with a statement where they then conclude it with, but he's a good man, or a good person, or but she's a good person, right? So this is a form of dismissiveness, so they can then feel less anxious about the situation and feel less anxious about staying in the relationship. Because the truth is, people with codependency stay in a relationship for different reasons, but they're doing it because in some warped way, it's fulfilling some needs for them, a sense of control of somebody, if it has a toxic situation with their behavior, or the audacity to believe that they can fix somebody, they're going to fix them, right? Or they feel compelled still for this a person's happiness, right? A lot more to be said about. That's a whole separate video about why people end up in codependency type situations, as far as the imbalances, secure, insecure, anxious, preoccupied, attachment styles. You can get all kinds of stuff, why certain people end up feed into certain situations and how they match up. But the thing is, all toxic people, or even some of the more extreme examples of not a good person in terms of what your definition of good or bad person is, can have an exception where something might look better for them. For example, Ted Bundy, the notorious serial killer. I imagine somebody who knew him would say, well, yeah, within a context, here's something I can say nice about Ted Bundy. So he's a good man, right? Let's just dismiss the fact that he was a sociopath, serial killer, right? Or psychopath, sociopath, whichever those terms will work for you, right? Whatever one fits best for you. So never mind all his serial killer type situations. So you can think of Charles Manson, right? Here's another extreme example. Someone will say, yeah, but Charles Manson, he was a musician, right? He liked to play music. So he was creative. And so, maybe so he's really a good man, right? Never mind. He's a murderer, right? And a cult leader, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm using extreme examples on purpose. There always can be something, or perhaps something, about a person who has toxic behavior, like somebody who's physically violent, antisocial personality type characteristics, who blatantly disregards the rights of other people and abuses people, exploits people for personal gain. So they may physically injure someone, financially exploit somebody, endear themselves in a way that's superficial, only to gain advantage, to exploit another individual, antisocial, a bit narcissistic, if you will. So there's individuals who can have characteristics such as these. Now, these type of behaviors, most people, their opinion is that, I don't think this fits the definition of, in my textbook, or my definition book, my dictionary for good person, right? In terms of, if you want to say morals, morals simply put has to do with ideas of right and wrong behaviors within a society or a culture. And sure, there can be some variation in that depending on where you live. For sure, there can be some subjective lens to that situation of what is considered good or bad within a culture. But a lot of cultures and some things may be more universal than others, right? Like murdering, physically assaulting people, theft, stealing, causing harm, unnecessary suffering on other people, predatory type like behaviors, and so on. So whether it's a toxic man who is physically abusive with women, abuses drugs, preys upon vulnerable, weaker women, psychologically compromised women, to say get them to engage in prostitution, like pimps, right? Pimps will prostitute women, exploit them for financial gain, abuse them. And some of these women who are caught up in prostitution will see the behavior, and maybe in some sense they could agree, like, yes, this does not look good, but at the same time defend the person and say they're a good man, a good person, right? So this is the problem. I see a lot of this dismissiveness with distorted ideas of definitions of what a good person is, right? And I want to be clear, to be fair, I'm not saying that people cannot be redeemable and make changes in their characteristics to then become a different person that is healthier, perhaps, recovery, repents, changes behaviors, has a sincere sense of remorse, regret for their past, and is then compelled to make changes for the right reasons, right? So this goes into a whole other, another way of what I see with these situations. So a lot of times in codependency, with let's say a woman who's being codependent with a toxic man, they will make their basis for their rationale to stay in the relationship despite the imbalance, despite the abuse. They'll make the decision to stay based on their belief and opinion about somebody's potential. Well, he could be a better man. It could be better if he would do A, B, and C and make these changes. He has potential. And because he has potential, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up, right? I'm going to stay in here, even though I get the crap beat out of me. I'm financially abused. Maybe my children don't even feel safe because this volatile behavior of this man, he can explode and become angry. Maybe he comes home drunk and you don't know who you're going to get. Dr. Jekyll or Hyde, right? Jekyll and Hyde, to use that comparison analogy. So despite all these things, he could be a better man. So I'm hanging in there. I'm not a quitter. So this becomes the justification. It's irrational as a reason to stay with the toxic person rather than break it off. And also this idea, but he's a good man. He's really a good man. Maybe if I could just be that much better, then he will change. Another mistake. Nobody's going to change for you. People only change for themselves if they internalize the value and the worth of doing it. So you get the ideas. What is your definition of good? Perhaps use the word healthy, right? Is this healthy? Ideas and definitions of good or bad behavior. Healthy or unhealthy behaviors, right? Because at the end of the day, being able to make a decision based on the historical evidence of a person's behaviors within context, it's pervasive across multiple contexts and over time, because that's really the only more sound decision you're going to make, that in terms of what's the best thing to do based on the historical evidence of how someone behaves, not what they say. What is the likelihood that they will become this potential or better person, or it could be better, right? That's the only thing really to go by, is the behavior, how it presents, and what does history say, not on what you hope they could be, because that's just wishful thinking. And in this sense, perhaps you're just more attached to something that's an idea that's really not even about the person. You're not reading the writing that's on the wall, which is their behavior. So I could go all day long on these scenarios. I've heard worse examples before. I've even heard women talk about a boyfriend or someone who's perhaps in jail for something like that has crimes against children, child pornography, some other horrible crime, and still in the same breath say a dismissive statement, but they're a good person. Now, I get it. There can be particular characteristics about a person that by itself, in and of itself, if you just had that only and only that particular issue, you could say that that is good, but that doesn't mean you then become dismissive to wipe out the entire context of all of the person's behavior, which is all the other things too, that goes in your analysis of whether or not this is a healthy person. It's a good decision in terms of your evaluation, your assessment of this individual, right? As a person, is this a good person to have in your life? Or do you need to have boundaries? What is your definition of a good person? I can go to a job interview. And they could say, yeah, you got a criminal history here. You got all these felonies and for robbery, armed robbery, burglar of a habitation, assault and battery. And then is somebody in the job panel interview going to say, yeah, but you know what? There was that time that he helped an old lady cross the street. And there was the time he held a door open for somebody. Yeah, and he did buy some Christmas present for someone one time. You know what? James is a good person. You're hired, right? Never mind the job you're applying for. Those particular crimes could be a concern, right? Nothing against people who've made mistakes and have reformed themselves and then got back in the workplace. I used to help people adjust from coming out of prison. So I'm not saying that's anything against people being able to reform, because they do, just on a side note. So I hope this encourages you to think today. If you're someone watching this video, maybe maybe you might admit to yourself, if maybe you're one of these people, maybe I make too many damn excuses to be dismissive of having a more objective, honest interpretation and evaluation or assessment of a person's behaviors in terms of what's healthy, what's right, definition of, is this a good person, right? So if that's you, you might want to consider, what's going on there, what's the best thing to do? What is your responsibility in that, right? Because this is really a creation of who has access to your life based on your boundaries, because our boundaries, which is our rules and limits, which is also to some extent a reflection of our values, that is what determines not only who can have access into your life, but who stays in your life, period. So if you have somebody toxic in your life who's caught up in toxic behavior, they're actively engaging in very unhealthy behavior that's toxic, and these situations, it's not happening to you all accidental. Like, you did not find yourself one day walking down the sidewalk and slipped on a banana peel, and now you're just in a situation caught up with somebody that's one of these situations. So until I make another video, I hope everybody has a good weekend. I think today's Saturday, right? October 14th. I'm currently doing a playlist. I'm working on fitness in my 50s, performance measures coming up, things I'm doing to challenge myself, pull-ups, some plyometric stuff, and other things, like things that I want to improve upon in my 50s, just for a bit of inspiration for myself and to show other people that you can continue to perform at a high level in your 50s despite getting older. Body composition goals, I have that going on too. I did a baseline September 6th last month. I was getting fat. I've been fatter before in my life, in my 30s, when I kind of let things go a bit too far because of food, quite frankly, because of the food. So nobody wakes up and every day without putting some kind of an effort to maintain a certain level of fitness, right? Whether you're 25 or 52 years old like me, or despite your genetics, it takes some effort and having a plan. So that playlist is on here. You can check that out if you haven't seen that. If you found this video to be a bit provoking, maybe it challenges you to think, I'd appreciate it perhaps if you could like and subscribe. That support my channel. Really appreciate it. And if you have any comments, opinions, that's perfectly fine. Even if you have a different thought or a different belief or opinion, that's okay too. This video is just simply some thoughts. There's a lot more to be said for sure. Hope everybody has a good weekend, and take care. Thank you.